not out in the beautiful grounds like this today, but stuck in a laboratory 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. And the reason I can do that, and the reason my team does that, is because we want to, but also because of days like today where people come along and actually support what we're trying to do. As a scientist, I believe in being completely and utterly unreasonable and irrational. And what I mean by that is that what we're trying to do in the laboratory today is completely unreasonable and irrational, and that is we're trying to get people out of wheelchairs. That idea seems completely at odds with what we can expect. And some of us sort of would like to see it, but we shrug our shoulders and go, well, it may happen one day, but, you know, who knows. But I'll just relate first a very brief story about my own son, and then go from there to say why we can be unreasonable and irrational. My own son is in hospital today, and he's been treated by some fantastic paediatricians. He's 4 years old. He started to limp, and, you know, we weren't too worried until he started to get a fever. We took him into hospital, and the doctor basically didn't quite know what it was, and us being both trained in this area sort of had a bit of an idea. It worked out pretty quickly that it would be treated with an antibiotic, and it would take about 6 weeks of treatment on this antibiotic, and he'll be better. I mean, that's insane. That is irrational and crazy. Prior to 1940, unfortunately, my son probably could have died, or at the very least, he might have had his leg amputated. And that would have been the case for many of the people here today who've got children who've had infections, had problems. And this was a major medical advance, the discovery of antibiotics, which we all take completely and utterly for granted. But we went from something that was deadly, incurable, impossible, to something that was ultimately treatable. And in fact, the first case of penicillin is a case that's described where someone was given, the first time was given to a human patient. They just started to get better, and they tried to collect the last bit from their urine to give it back to them, but unfortunately they ran out, and that person then re-got the infection and died. So what we would like to imagine is that through medical research, and through persistence, and through commitment, and through just powering on against all odds, that we may, in fact, one day have a situation where someone goes into hospital with a spinal cord injury and comes out 6 weeks later, and we go, oh, that's terrible, they've got a spinal cord injury. Oh, well, I'm sure they'll get better. And that's where we want to get to. Now, when you say that to some scientists and some people, they say, oh, we can't use the word cure because we don't want to sort of put out unreasonable expectations. And my answer to that is there's no such thing as unreasonable hope. That any hope is real hope, and that is what keeps us as a civilization and as human beings going, is hope. There is false promise. We can't promise today that we will achieve that, and we can't promise that we can get someone out of a wheelchair today, but we can hope and work and strive to bring that outcome. The point is that all of you here today are doing far more than you might actually realise. It's not just the support, although I can tell you again in our laboratory that your support really matters. It doesn't matter how small it is, it actually contributes in a real way to the sort of research that we do in the laboratory today. But it's also just by being here in the Lions Club who put their heart and soul into making this work. By being here today, it also shows your physical support, your willingness to get up and get behind something that really matters. And I can tell you, I take that back to the laboratory, and I'm sure Kelly takes it back, and I know that SpinalCure takes it back to where they are working non-stop for the outcome. I'll just say a couple of words about SpinalCure as a recipient of their funding, and also a very, very strong supporter of SpinalCure. Having known them since I was overseas working as a scientist for many years, I came back to Australia, and I was so deeply impressed by SpinalCure and what they're trying to achieve, and not only what they're trying to achieve, what they are achieving. When you work as hard as we do, you often think about what are the obstacles. You know, why aren't we there? Why aren't we getting there? What's holding us back? And I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of things holding us back. There's political issues. We have to overcome those, the political will. Political will translates, of course, into money and finance and financial support. And there's coordination of scientists around the world. Many of us who are working so hard to keep our head above water that we sometimes don't always communicate as effectively as we'd like to with our other scientists. We don't do too badly at that. We have to do it, otherwise we wouldn't be able to stay in business, so to speak. But I can tell you, as a person who's been quite close to SpinalCure, that they help in all those three areas. Politically, behind the scenes, we have now achieved, through their work, embryonic stem cell research in Australia. When that became a political issue, John Howard basically put up his hand and said, no, we're not going to do embryonic stem cell research. Behind the scenes, he turned around eventually and said, we'll leave it to a conscience vote. And the reason he had to do that, in my opinion, was that 70% of Australians came out and said they support embryonic stem cell research. They can't see the idea of just throwing these excess embryos down the drain rather than using them to help save lives. 70% of Australians, this wonderful thing about the Australian democracy, we're a highly educated, highly democratic and very smart group of people. Behind the scenes, SpinalCure was working tirelessly, and I can tell you that they were not public at all, but they worked tirelessly to bring about that outcome. And that outcome doesn't only help people with spinal cord injury, it helps people with Alzheimer's, it helps people with Parkinson's disease, it helps people with numerous disorders in this community. And in that sense, I think SpinalCure is not only helping people with spinal cord injury, but they actually do play a lot of role in facilitating things that ultimately help other people. In terms of funding, events like today, of course they work on the government to make sure we have funding, but there's certain things that the government won't fund, and that's the high-risk, difficult, front-end research, and it's only through the support of people like yourselves that SpinalCure can actually achieve that and help us achieve our outcomes. And then it's in terms of coordination, the other thing that SpinalCure are massively involved in is they've played a role instigating what is now an organisation called SKIN. You might start hearing about them over the next couple of years, but what they are is a national network funded by the state government of New South Wales, bringing together spinal cord researchers to start clinical trials and to bring us all together to bring our outcomes faster. And again, SpinalCure played a role in achieving that. So I think your support of SpinalCure is something that you should feel very proud of, something you can go home and go, you know, that was a really important thing I did today, and I think it was fun, but geez, you guys are doing something important. On my own research, I could talk about that for hours, but I won't. Just to say that we think that there is a particular angle, I think worldwide, I think as a result again of support we received in Australia and through SpinalCure, I feel that some of the things we're achieving have the potential to advance us in a significant way towards the goal. As I say, we're unreasonable and irrational. We will keep going, we will persist, and we will keep going until we do everything in our power to get us towards that goal, and we will work with everyone we can to achieve it. I'll leave it there, but again, I'd just like to really acknowledge you again, just one more time, and just say that all of you really are playing an important role being here. Please continue your support. Please stay in touch with SpinalCure if you can. Certainly if is ever having lunch with a member from Camden, make sure you tell him about the important work that's been done here today. Those guys in state government have done something to bring Anskin together. It's something to be very proud of, and they can certainly do more. And I think that lobbying, letting them know that you care about these things, is something he can bring back to Parliament. So I'd like to leave my message there, and again just say congratulations and thank you to all.